Plotinus, Ennead V.1, Section 7. How the divine mind and soul come to be. In this section, Plotinus tackles the hardest question yet. How can the One, which is not a mind and does not think, produce the divine mind? And once the divine mind exists, how does soul come from it? This part of the text lays out the full picture of how reality flows from the highest source down to the living power that shapes our world. Plotinus starts with a simple idea. Anything that is perfect and complete naturally produces something in its likeness. The sun cannot help but give off light. A fire cannot help but give off heat. In the same way, the One cannot help but produce something that carries its quality forward. This is not effort. The One does not decide to create. It just overflows, the way a fountain that is always full spills over without ever running dry. And that first overflow becomes the divine mind. But here is the puzzle. The One is beyond thought. It does not think, does not plan, does not even know itself the way we know ourselves. So how does it produce something that thinks? Plotinus answers with one of the most beautiful ideas in his whole philosophy. From the overflowing fullness of the One, a first kind of radiance comes out. Think of it as a raw glow, not yet formed into anything specific. It comes from the One, but it is not yet the divine mind in its full sense. Then, because it comes from the One, and because the One is the source of everything good, this first glow naturally turns back to look at the One. And in that act of looking, in that beholding of its source, the glow becomes the divine mind. The act of seeing is what creates the divine mind. The seeing and the mind are the same event. Take away the upward gaze, and the divine mind would not exist. This is worth holding carefully because it is easy to get wrong. The One does not look at itself. The One just stays what it is, perfectly still, perfectly full. It is the first overflow that turns back toward the One. And in that turning, in that quiet gaze at perfect goodness, the overflow becomes shaped, formed, and filled with meaning. It becomes mind by looking at what is beyond all minds. Plotinus uses a quick image here. When we see something in the normal way, our sight goes outward in a straight line, from us to the thing we are looking at. But the divine mind does not work like that. Its seeing is more like a circle, turned in on itself, where the One who knows and the thing that is known are united. The divine mind does not reach outside itself for its thoughts. It contains them within its own unity. So what is the divine mind made of? It is one thing, a single living intelligence. But it holds within itself all the perfect ideas, all the eternal truths that Plato talked about. The perfect idea of beauty, the perfect idea of justice, the perfect idea of what it means to be human. These all exist together, at the same time, inside the divine mind. They are distinct from one another, but they are held in perfect unity. This is where Plotinus introduces the idea of true being. When he says being, he does not just mean existing. A chair exists, a tree exists. But those things are always changing. A tree grows, ages, and dies. A body changes every moment. Physical things take part in being, but they never really hold on to it because they cannot stay still long enough to simply be. For Plotinus, true being means stable, complete, unchanging reality. And that belongs properly to the divine mind. The perfect ideas inside it do not change, do not decay, do not become anything other than what they are. They simply are, fully and forever. This is why Plotinus says that to really be something, you need to have a shape and a limit. Something that is totally undefined cannot really be in the full sense. Being needs boundary and form. And this is why the One is said to be beyond being. The One has no limit, no form, no particular character. And that is exactly what allows it to be the source of everything. If the One had a specific shape, it could only produce things of that shape. But because it stays simple and undefined, it can be the source of every particular thing. Being no one specific thing is what allows it to be the source of everything. When the divine mind comes into being, all of its contents come with it. All the perfect ideas, all the intelligible realities, all the beauty of the higher world. The divine mind does not start out empty and fill up over time. It arrives complete, and it holds everything within itself. It does not let the ideas fall away into the messy world below. Plotinus reaches for a Greek myth here to help make the point. He reads the story of Kronos and Zeus as a philosophical picture. Kronos, the old god who swallows his children to keep them inside himself, stands for the divine mind. The mind holds all its offspring, all the ideas, safely within its own unity. It keeps them gathered so they do not slip down into the world of change. Then Kronos, full within himself, gives birth to Zeus. And Zeus stands for soul. Soul is the child of the divine mind, the next level of reality, which carries the ideas outward into life and motion and the shaping of the universe. So, soul is born out of the fullness of the divine mind. And here Plotinus makes a careful point. Any child, even in the divine realm, is lower than its parent. Soul is an image of the divine mind, not the divine mind itself. It is still rational, still intelligent, but it is more active, more connected to life and movement than the mind is. And yet, soul is not cut off from the divine mind. Plotinus says soul is like the light of the divine mind, inseparably attached to it. On its upper side, soul is joined with the mind, filled by it, sharing its nature. On its lower side, soul reaches down to the physical world, giving it life and order. Soul lives in two directions at once. Upward, it stays connected to the divine mind. Downward, it animates the world we see. This double direction is what makes soul the bridge. It is the connector between the eternal, unchanging world above and the changing physical world we live in. And through soul, everything below receives life, order, and meaning. So this is the picture that Section 7 gives us. The One overflows. From that overflow comes a first glow, not yet fully formed. That glow turns back toward the One, and in the act of looking, it becomes the divine mind. The divine mind is the realm of true being, holding all the perfect ideas together in living unity. From the fullness of the divine mind, soul is born as its image. Soul stays connected to the mind above and reaches down to give life and order to the world. The single most important line to carry with you from this section is this. The One does not become the divine mind by looking at itself. The first overflow becomes the divine mind by turning toward the One. And the same pattern holds all the way down. Each level becomes fully itself by looking toward its source. The divine mind is fulfilled by gazing at the One. Soul is fulfilled by gazing at the divine mind. And we, as individual souls, become most fully ourselves when we turn upward, through prayer and contemplation, toward what is higher. This is not a cold machine. It is a living chain, built on overflow and vision, on gift from above and love from below. And from that first overflow, the divine mind comes to be. In that act of seeing, the divine mind comes to be. It becomes mind by beholding what is beyond all mind. Plotinus, Ennead V.1, sections 10, 11, 12, and conclusion. Section 10. The three principles within us. After building the architecture of reality and defending it against the misunderstandings of earlier thinkers, Plotinus now makes one of the most important turns in the whole treatise. The three principles, the One, the divine mind, and soul, do not just exist out there in the cosmos, beyond the heavens. They also exist within you. The same three-level structure that shapes all of reality at the largest scale also shapes reality at the deepest point of who you are. Plotinus calls this the interior man, borrowing a phrase from Plato. What he means is simple. If you look inward, past the body, past the surface of feelings and sense impressions, you find a deeper nature. Our soul is a divine thing. It does not belong to the world of the senses. It belongs to a higher order, the same order as the three great principles above us. But the soul within us is not just one simple thing. Plotinus says there is the lower phase of soul, the life principle that animates the body and takes care of bodily functions. And above this, there is a higher phase of soul, a reasoning soul that does not need a body at all. This higher phase can think purely in its own nature without being contaminated by the senses. And here Plotinus makes a striking claim. He says this higher phase of soul is seated within the divine mind itself. Now, this is a strange thing to say, and Plotinus knows it. How can part of us be seated in the divine mind? He answers that we should not look for a place in space where this higher soul is located. It is not somewhere up in the sky. It is not behind our eyes or inside our chest. It is outside of all space entirely, because its nature is immaterial and cannot be held by any physical location. When Plato speaks of the Creator casting the soul around the universe from outside, he is pointing to this higher phase of soul that is never caught inside the physical world, even while it is present to it. And when Plato speaks of the soul as a charioteer whose head reaches upward toward the heights, the same truth is meant. Part of us is always already above. This leads to a practical point. When the old teachers tell us to separate the soul from the body, they are not telling us to leave our bodies behind in some literal way. That separation, Plotinus says, is already made in nature. The higher soul is already apart. What the teachers are really talking about is an inner orientation. It is about holding our proper rank. It is about using our thinking in the right way. It is about turning our attention away from the pull of the body and upward toward the higher world, while the lower phase of soul still does its ordinary work of caring for the body. In other words, separating soul from body is not a spatial move. It is an act of attention. It is a deliberate inward turning toward what we truly are. Section 11. The permanent good and the center within. Section 11 now asks a careful question. When we reason about what is right and good, how is that even possible? Plotinus says that the very act of thinking through whether this is better than that, whether this choice is right or wrong, already presupposes something stable. There must be some permanent right, some standard of goodness that does not shift. Otherwise, the whole act of reasoning would have nothing to appeal to. We would be building arguments on sand. So where is this permanent right? Plotinus says that since our reasoning about goodness is intermittent, since we think about it sometimes and forget it other times, there must be something within us that holds this right not as a passing thought, but as a permanent possession. That something is the intellectual principle within us, the highest phase of our own soul rooted in the divine mind. The divine mind does not struggle to remember the good. It possesses it always. And above even this, Plotinus says, must stand the principle of this principle, the cause of the divine mind itself. And this highest cause he simply calls God, meaning the One. Plotinus then gives one of the most beautiful images in the whole treatise, the image of the center. Think of a circle. At the center of the circle, there is a single point. From this center, many radii stretch outward to the edge. Each radius is distinct from the others, but all of them meet at one single point, the center. The center itself cannot be divided up or handed out in pieces. It stays one, intangible, and yet present at every point where a radius meets it. Plotinus says this is how the One is present within us. Within each of us there is such a center, a point by which we are gathered together, linked, and held in being. It is not a physical point in the body, it is a metaphysical center, the place where our being meets its source. And those whose whole tendency leans inward and upward toward that center, those are the ones firmly rooted in the Supreme. This image is important. It tells us that the One is not far away. It is present to us at the deepest point of who we are. The spiritual life is not a journey across a great distance. It is a turning inward, a return to the center that was always there. Section 12. Why we do not notice and how to listen. This now raises a natural question. If the three principles are already within us, and the One is present at our deepest center, why don't we feel any of this? Why do most people go through life with no awareness of these high powers at all? Some of us, Plotinus admits with sorrow, never bring these activities into effect even once. His answer is careful and quite surprising. The divine beings, he says, are always carrying out their own activity. The divine mind is always active in its eternal vision, and the One remains the silent source above all such activity. And even our own soul maintains this unfailing activity within us, continuously doing what it is its nature to do. The activity is always happening. What is missing is not the activity. What is missing is our perception of it. Plotinus explains it like this. We only become aware of what reaches our sense faculty. Whatever happens in the soul that does not get transmitted into our ordinary awareness simply passes unnoticed. It is still happening. The soul is still active, but we do not register it because our attention is tied up with sense perception, and we mistake what we can feel for the whole of what we are. And here Plotinus makes a point worth holding carefully. A human being, he says, is not just the higher part of the soul. A human being is the whole soul, including both its upper and its lower phases. So when we identify ourselves only with our immediate sense experience, we are treating a part as though it were the whole. We are smaller in our own eyes than we really are. To become aware of what is always present, Plotinus says, we must turn the perceptive faculty inward. And then he gives the most beautiful image in the entire treatise. Imagine you are waiting to hear a voice you love, a voice you desire to hear above all others. You let all the other sounds pass by unnoticed. You strain your ear toward one sound only, alert for the moment when that most welcome voice finally comes. That, Plotinus says, is exactly what we must do with the soul. We must let the sounds of sense go by, except where sheer necessity requires us to attend to them. And we must keep the soul's perception bright and quick, listening for the sounds that come from above. This is not cold metaphysics. This is the instruction of a spiritual teacher. The whole treatise has been building toward this moment. Plotinus has shown us the architecture of reality, defended it against misunderstandings, and now he tells us what to do. Turn inward. Go quiet. Listen. Conclusion. The Arc of Ennead, 5.1. Stepping back from all 12 sections together, the shape of the whole treatise now comes clearly into view. Plotinus began with the problem of the soul. In sections 1, 2, and 3, he described the fall. Not a fall in space, but a fall in attention. The soul forgets its origin because it turns its gaze away from what is highest and becomes entangled with lower things. The return, therefore, is not a journey across a distance. It is a remembering of what was never truly lost. From there, sections 4, 5, and 6 built the architecture. The divine mind above us, eternal, complete, holding all the forms in living unity. And the one above the divine mind, beyond thought, beyond being, the silent source from which everything flows. Section 7 was the hinge. Plotinus explained how the one produces the divine mind, and how the divine mind produces soul, all without effort, without change, and without loss at the source. Each level is constituted by turning toward what is above it, and that act of loving vision is the deep pulse of the whole cosmos. Sections 8 and 9 defended the teaching as ancient, showing that Plato and the older thinkers already pointed toward the same 3 levels, even if their language was partial or incomplete. And the great warning was sharpened there. Do not mistake the divine mind for the one. The one is beyond even the highest thought. And now, in sections 10, 11, and 12, the treatise has turned inward. The 3 principles are not only out there, they are also in here. The one is present at our center. The divine mind gives us a permanent share in intelligible truth and goodness. And our soul is always active, even when we do not notice. What is required of us is not to build a new connection. It is to recognize the connection that has always been there. If the whole treatise could be held in a single line, it might be this: reality flows from a silent source through living intelligence into embodied life. And that same flow runs through you. Your work is not to travel somewhere else. Your work is to grow quiet, turn inward, and listen for the voice that is already speaking within. Ennead 5.1. Sections 8 to 9. Soul, Cosmos, and Body. These 2 sections are where Plotinus gets very concrete. He's been describing the hypostases in their pure form. Now he asks the harder question: how does an immaterial soul actually relate to a physical universe and a physical body? The answers are surprising and go against common intuitions. The central problem he's solving. The obvious assumption is that soul enters the body the way water enters a container. Soul is inside the body, contained by it, dependent on it. Plotinus says this is exactly backwards, and sections 8 to 9 are his argument for why. Section 8. The soul contains the body, not vice versa. The cosmos is in soul. Plotinus makes a radical claim. The physical cosmos does not contain soul. Soul contains the cosmos. The universe exists within soul the way a net exists within the sea. The net has its own structure and shape, but it is wholly surrounded by, held in, and dependent on what it floats in. Soul is the greater reality. Matter and body are the lesser. The relationship of container and contained is the reverse of what ordinary perception suggests. Why this follows from the emanation. Think back through the hierarchy. Soul proceeds from Nous, which proceeds from the One. Matter and the physical world come after soul in the emanative order. They are downstream of soul. Something cannot contain what is ontologically prior to and greater than itself. The body you live in, the cosmos you inhabit, these are soul's product, not soul's container. Soul gave rise to them, animates them, and holds them in being moment to moment. The two ways soul relates to the physical world. Plotinus distinguishes carefully between two different modes of soul's relationship to body and cosmos. Mode 1. The world soul's relationship to the cosmos. The world soul governs and animates the physical universe the way a craftsman's reason governs his work, from above, without being absorbed into it. The world soul is in contact with the cosmos, but not entangled in it. He uses a beautiful image. Like a wise man whose reason directs his hands to work, without the reasoning part of him descending into the hands. The governing intelligence remains itself, clean and separate, even while its influence permeates the thing it governs. The world soul never gets dirty. It touches matter without being stained by it. Mode 2. The individual soul's relationship to the body. This is where the problem enters. The individual human soul has a different and more troubled relationship to its body. Unlike the world soul, which governs from above without losing itself, the individual soul tends to become over-identified with its body. It doesn't just animate the body, it starts to think it is the body. It becomes absorbed, entangled, confused. This is the fall in Plotinus's terms. Not a dramatic cosmic event, but this gradual slide into identification with the lower. Section 9. Why the soul doesn't become fully material. Soul cannot be contaminated at its core. Even though the lower soul gets entangled with the body, Plotinus insists that soul as such cannot be fundamentally corrupted by matter. Matter has no positive power of its own. It is essentially privation, the absence of form and being. It cannot reach up and contaminate something that is genuinely higher. The analogy he uses, light is not darkened by shining into dark places. The darkness doesn't infect the light. Soul shining into matter is like this. Its higher nature remains intact even when it illuminates something lower. The body depends on soul, not the other way round. Plotinus presses this further. The body is not the stable platform that soul rests on. The body is only coherent and alive because soul is present in it. The moment soul withdraws, death, the body immediately begins to dissolve back into disorder. This means soul is the active, sustaining principle. Body is the passive, dependent recipient. Life flows from soul into body, never the other direction. The common feeling that we are a body that has a soul is, for Plotinus, a complete inversion of the truth. We are a soul that has a body, and even that is too strong. We are soul, and the body is a temporary expression of soul's lower activity. The physical world is not the backdrop against which souls move. It is a dependent expression of soul's outward-flowing activity, held moment to moment in existence by what is above it. Why this matters personally. Plotinus isn't just doing cosmology here. There are direct, practical implications. 1. You are not trapped in a body. The soul is not imprisoned in matter in the way a man is imprisoned in a cell. The cell cannot be larger than the prisoner, and here the soul is always the greater reality. 2. Death cannot destroy you. If soul contains the body rather than the other way around, the body's dissolution at death changes nothing fundamental about soul. What is the container is not destroyed when the contained thing breaks. 3. Your suffering from bodily things is chosen, not imposed. Because soul is genuinely greater than and independent of body, the soul's suffering from bodily conditions, its anxiety, its craving, its fear of death, is not forced on it from outside. It is the consequence of the soul's own misidentification, which means it can be undone. Connecting 8 to 9. Back to 10. This is what makes Section 10's revelation about the two levels of the soul so powerful. After sections 8 to 9 have established that soul is the container and body the contained, that soul's higher nature is never truly compromised, Section 10 tells you that the undescended, uncontaminated part of your soul is available right now. The cosmos is in soul. Your body is in your soul. And your soul's highest part is always already in Nous. The whole structure is nested in the direction of increasing reality, not decreasing, and you sit at the hinge point, capable of looking either way. Why it matters for your study. Given you've been working through Volume 1 section by section, this Section 10 is essentially the practical payoff of the whole treatise. The metaphysical architecture, 1 to Nous to soul, that Plotinus built in sections 1 to 9, now lands in the question, where are you in that structure? The answer is that you straddle two worlds. The practice is learning to inhabit the higher one consciously. Plotinus, Ennead 5.1.10. The two levels of the soul. This is one of the most personally urgent passages in all of Plotinus. He's not just doing metaphysics here. He's describing what you actually are and why you feel divided. The core teaching. Plotinus says the soul exists simultaneously on two levels, and most people are only aware of one of them. The lower soul, the descended image. This is the soul as we ordinarily experience it, engaged with the body, sensation, emotion, time, and discursive thinking, moving from thought to thought, step by step. It's the part of you that worries, desires, perceives, and acts in the material world. Plotinus sometimes calls this an eidolon, an image or reflection of the real soul. It's not false, but it's derivative. It's the soul's shadow cast downward into matter. The higher soul, the undescended soul. This is the part that never actually left the intelligible realm. It remains permanently in contact with Nous, divine intellect, always in contemplation, always in the presence of the forms. It is your truest self, but you are largely unconscious of it. This is Plotinus's famous doctrine of the undescended soul. Even while you are sitting here reading this, a part of your soul is perpetually in union with intellect above, engaged in pure noetic activity. The problem he's diagnosing. Why don't we notice this higher soul? Because we have over-identified with the lower, descended image. We mistake the reflection for the original. Like someone so absorbed in a dream, they've forgotten they are asleep. He uses almost an awakening metaphor. The higher soul is always active up there, doing its work in the intelligible world, but our conscious attention is pointed entirely downward toward the body and its concerns. The practical implication. This section isn't just descriptive. It's a call to reorientation. Philosophy and contemplation are the means by which you shift your center of gravity from the lower soul back up to the higher. You're not creating something new. You're remembering what you already are and have never ceased to be. The world soul, psyche tu pantos. In Plotinus's system, soul as a hypostasis is a single, unified reality that proceeds from Nous. The world soul is soul at its highest and most universal expression. The soul that animates the entire cosmos, gives it order, and holds it in being. It is what makes the universe a living, intelligible whole rather than dead matter. How your higher soul relates to it. Plotinus teaches that individual human souls are not separate substances from the world soul. They are better understood as partial expressions or offshoots of it. He uses the image of a single light radiating from one source, with individual souls being like rays that have the same nature as the source. Your higher soul, the undescended part, participates in the world soul, and through that participation participates in Nous above it. It's not that you have a private pipeline to the intelligible realm. It's that at the higher level, the boundaries between individual souls and world soul become increasingly porous, and ultimately the distinction starts to dissolve. Your higher soul doesn't sit beneath the world soul looking up at it. It belongs to the same level, sharing the same activity of contemplating Nous. In moments of genuine philosophical or contemplative elevation, Plotinus believes you are not merely approaching the world soul, you are consciously realizing your identity with it. The tension Plotinus acknowledges. He does maintain a distinction, though. The world soul never descends. It governs the cosmos from above, without becoming entangled in it. Individual souls, by contrast, have a lower part that does descend and gets pulled into matter and particularity. So the world soul is, in a sense, your higher soul's elder sister. The same nature, but without the complication of embodiment. This creates an interesting asymmetry. The world soul looks purely upward toward Nous, while your individual soul looks both ways, upward through its higher aspect, downward through its lower. The mystical implication. When Plotinus describes the soul's return and ultimate union, especially in the later Enneads, what's happening is that the individual soul progressively sheds the illusion of separateness and rediscovers that its deeper identity was always the world soul, which was always contemplating Nous, which was always proceeding from the One. Your individuality isn't annihilated, but it turns out to be less fundamental than you thought. The you that was always quietly present at the higher level was never fully individual to begin with. This is why Plotinus can say, without contradiction, both that you have a unique soul and that in the deepest sense, all souls are one. The multiplicity is real, but it belongs to the lower level of manifestation. At the root, there is one soul, one intellect, and beyond that, the One, which exceeds even those categories. World soul looks both ways, never forgets. The world soul has a double orientation built into its nature. It perpetually contemplates Nous above. This is what gives it its intelligible content and ordering power, and it simultaneously looks downward, governing and animating the physical cosmos. Critically, though, its downward governance never compromises its upward vision. It administers matter the way a general might oversee a battlefield without losing his mind to the chaos of it. It remains untouched, unentangled, always lucid. Both directions are held simultaneously, with no loss of the higher. The higher soul, always aware above. Your individual soul's higher part, precisely because it participates at the world soul level and never actually descended, shares this same unbroken upward awareness. It is perpetually in contact with Nous. It never forgets because it never left. The tragedy Plotinus identifies is that you, in your ordinary conscious life, are not aware of this activity happening above you in your own soul. It's doing its work constantly. You're just not tuned to it. The descended soul looks down, can forget. This is where the rupture happens. The lower soul, absorbed in body, sensation, emotion, and time, has its attention captured entirely by the downward direction. It doesn't just look down. It can become so identified with what is below that it effectively forgets there is an above at all. This is Plotinus's version of the fall. Not a dramatic cosmic event, but a gradual reorientation of attention, a forgetting, lethe, of origin. The soul mistakes the image for the real, the shadow for the light that casts it. The remembering, anamnesis. When Plotinus talks about philosophy as the path back, he's drawing on Plato's anamnesis, but deepening it. You are not learning something new. You are redirecting attention toward what your own higher soul has never ceased knowing. The higher soul is like a lamp that's been on the whole time in the room above you. Philosophy is learning to climb the stairs and notice it. This is also why contemplative practice works the way it does. The Jesus prayer, hesychasm, Neoplatonic theoria, they are all essentially withdrawal of attention from the descended, scattered self, so the higher soul's constant upward activity can surface into consciousness. You're not building the connection to Nous. You're uncovering that it was never broken. Ennead V.1.11. Simple breakdown. Section 11 is essentially Plotinus's practical conclusion to the whole treatise. He's been building the metaphysical architecture across sections 1 to 10, and now he asks, how do you actually access any of this? The core move, turn inward. Plotinus says the three hypostases are not far away out in the cosmos somewhere. They are accessible within your own soul by a progressive inward turning. The reason most people never find them is not that they're hidden, it's that we keep looking outward, at things, at the world, at objects of desire. We're absent from what is always present. The three-stage ascent. Stage 1. Know yourself as soul. Turn away from external things. When you withdraw attention from the world and look inward, you first encounter yourself as soul, a living, thinking, self-moving reality that is not reducible to body. Stage 2. Discover Nous within soul. Look deeper. Soul doesn't generate its own content, its intelligence, its grasp of truth, the forms it thinks with. None of that originates in soul itself. Soul receives all of that from above. When you trace the source of your own thinking, you find Nous already present within you, deeper than your ordinary mind. Stage 3. Beyond Nous, the One. Then, Plotinus says, go further still. Nous itself, as rich and luminous as it is still multiple. It contains all the forms. It is both thinker and thought. There must be a source prior to that multiplicity. That source is the One. But here's the crucial thing. You cannot think your way to it. Intellect reaches its limit. The encounter with the One is more like a touching or presence than a cognitive act. The key insight. They were never absent. Plotinus makes a striking point here. The One, Nous, and soul are not absent from you. You are absent from them. They are always present, always active, always sustaining your existence at every moment. The whole journey inward is not about reaching something distant. It's about stopping the outward movement long enough to notice what was always already there. In plain language, you are always being held in existence by the One, always illuminated by Nous, always animated by soul. But your attention is pointed entirely the wrong way. Philosophy is the practice of turning around. It's almost like you've been standing with your back to a fire your whole life, fascinated by the shadows on the wall in front of you. Section 11 is Plotinus saying, turn around. How it connects back to the two souls. This section vindicates everything from section 10. The reason the inward ascent is possible, the reason turning inward actually gets you somewhere, is precisely because your higher soul never left. The path inward works because it follows a connection that was never severed. You're not building a new road, you're finding the one that was always there. Ennead V.1.12. Simple breakdown. Section 12 is the final movement of the entire treatise, and it's the most vertiginous. Everything Plotinus has built leads here. He now addresses the summit, the soul's encounter with the One itself. The problem with reaching the One. Plotinus has already told you how to ascend through soul to Nous, but now he faces a genuine difficulty. Nous is still multiple. It is thinker and thought. It contains the forms. It has structure and richness. The One is absolutely simple. No parts, no multiplicity, no structure whatsoever. This means your ordinary tools, including intellect itself, cannot reach it. To think something is already to divide. There is the thinker, the act of thinking, and the object, thought. The One precedes all of that. The moment you think the One, you've already missed it. What Plotinus says to do. The soul must undergo a radical simplification. Just as you stripped away the body to find soul, and stripped away discursive thought to find Nous, now you must strip away even intellectual activity itself. Let go of all content, all forms, all grasping. Become as simple as what you are approaching. He uses the idea of apherenesis, a stripping away, a progressive removal of everything that is not the One, until what remains is bare, simple presence. The encounter, not knowledge, but touch. Plotinus is very precise here. The union with the One is not a cognitive act, a vision, which still implies seer and seen, a mystical emotion, something you can describe afterward with full accuracy. It is more like a sudden contact, theige, or presence, a moment where the distance between the soul and its ultimate source simply collapses. Not because something new happened, but because the illusion of distance is dissolved. He sometimes calls it ecstasis, a standing outside of yourself. Not in the sense of frenzy, but in the sense that the ordinary bounded self that does the thinking is temporarily surpassed. The paradox at the heart of it. Here is the stunning thing Plotinus ends on. The One is not somewhere you arrive at after a long journey from far away. It is the innermost ground of everything, including you, right now. The whole emanative structure, One, to Nous, to world soul, to your higher soul, to your descended soul, is not a chain of things getting further from the source. Everything in that chain exists only by participation in the One, moment to moment. You are never not being held in existence by it. The ascent inward is really a recognition of what was never absent. The One is not at the top of a ladder you have to climb. It is the ground you are always already standing on, that you forgot you were standing on. How he closes the treatise. Plotinus ends 5.1 by tying the whole thing together. The three hypostases, soul, Nous, One, are not three alien realities out in the cosmos. They are the inner structure of your own existence, discoverable by turning inward with sufficient depth and discipline. The practical conclusion of the entire treatise is, the One is always giving itself. Nous is always illuminating. Soul is always alive. The only question is whether you are turned toward these realities or away from them. The shape of the whole treatise. Looking back across all 12 sections, you can see the elegant arc. Sections, movement 1 to 4. Why we need to investigate the hypostases at all, 5 to 7. The procession, how One to Nous to soul emanate, 8 to 9. Soul's relationship to the cosmos and body, 10. The two levels of the human soul, 11. The inward path, how to ascend through them, 12. The summit, encounter with the One itself. It moves from metaphysical architecture all the way to lived mystical practice. That's what makes 5.1 arguably the most complete single statement of Plotinus's entire vision.
Why investigate the hypostases at all?
Plotinus opens 5.1 with one of the most striking lines in ancient philosophy. He says the soul has fallen into dishonor. It has degraded itself, lost its dignity, forgotten its origin and nature. And the reason is not external misfortune, it is self-caused ignorance. We've become so absorbed in the body, in sensation, in external things, that we no longer know what we actually are. We have mistaken the lowest part of ourselves for the whole of ourselves. This is the problem the entire treatise exists to solve. The three reasons he gives for the investigation. 1. We are already these things, but don't know it. The hypostases are not alien theological entities. Soul, Nous, and the One are the inner structure of your own existence right now. It is ignorance of what you are. Plotinus treats this as a kind of metaphysical crisis. A man who doesn't know his own nature is living a diminished, misidentified life. 2. Misidentification causes suffering. Because the soul has forgotten its higher nature and identified entirely with the body and lower soul, it becomes dependent on external things for a sense of reality and worth, anxious because material things are unstable and perishing, enslaved to desires that can never actually satisfy what the soul is really hungering for. The soul is hungry for the One, for its source, but it keeps trying to feed that hunger with matter and sensation which cannot satisfy it. Plotinus sees most human suffering as misdirected longing, the soul's eros for the One being displaced onto inferior objects. 3. The return is possible, but requires knowledge. The soul can return to its source. This is not guaranteed automatically. It requires the soul to actively turn, to investigate, to understand. You cannot return to something you don't know exists or don't understand the direction of. The investigation of the hypostases is therefore the map for the return journey. Understanding the emanative structure, how one to nous, to soul, to you, tells you exactly which direction inward leads home. The deeper motivation, eros. Plotinus thinks there is something in the soul that already feels the pull upward, even when it can't name it. The restlessness people feel, the dissatisfaction with purely material life, the hunger for something that no object ever fully delivers, this is the soul's eros for nous and ultimately for the One, operating below the level of conscious understanding. The investigation gives that eros direction and clarity. Instead of dispersing your longing across 1,000 unsatisfying objects, you learn to trace it back to its actual source and follow it there. Why not just live virtuously without the metaphysics? Plotinus anticipates this objection. His answer is essentially, virtue without understanding of the hypostases is good, but incomplete. You can order your lower soul without knowing why. But the full return, the actual ascent to nous and beyond, requires understanding the structure of reality you are ascending through. It's like trying to navigate home in the dark versus navigating with a map and a light. The destination is the same, but one path is vastly more direct and certain. Plotinus describes the soul's condition. He uses words like dishonored, fallen, forgotten, asleep. He is describing what he sees as a genuine catastrophe, not a metaphysical puzzle to be solved academically, but a real wound in human existence that philosophy has the power to heal. The investigation of the hypostases is therefore not optional intellectual entertainment. It is, for Plotinus, the most important thing a human being can do, because nothing less than the recovery of your true nature and the possibility of union with your source is at stake. In one sentence, we must investigate the hypostases because we have forgotten what we are, and that forgetting is the root cause of our confusion, suffering, and exile from our own deepest nature. And the investigation is the first step of the return.
Have you ever felt, just completely overwhelmed by sensory overload? Like there's just too much noise, too many screens, too many demands on your time. Hold on to that feeling for a second. Now, think about the sun. It radiates massive amounts of light and heat across the whole solar system, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it never actually loses its own energy. It doesn't try to shine. It just continuously overflows. And that inexhaustible outpouring is exactly how a 3rd century philosopher named Plotinus explained the creation of the universe.
Right. It's a really powerful image.
It really is. So we have a fascinating stack of sources today. We are looking at Plotinus's original text, Ennead V.1, and pairing it with some modern philosophical commentaries and psychological analyses. Our mission for this deep dive is to decode how Plotinus mapped the architecture of the universe. And the crazy part is why he insists that this exact divine architecture is fully operational right inside you.
It really is a massive pivot in his philosophy, because for the first part of this text, Plotinus maps out the macrocosm, the architecture of everything out there. You have the One, which is that perfect overflowing source, exactly like your sun analogy.
Right, just constantly radiating.
Exactly. And because it overflows, it generates the intellect, which acts as the divine blueprint of all forms. Then that blueprint cascades down to generate the soul, which is the animating force shaping the physical world. It is this continuous flowing mechanism.
Okay, so that is the macrocosm.
Right. But then in section 10, Plotinus declares that this isn't just happening out in the cosmos. He says this exact tripartite structure is a microcosm existing within every single person.
Wait, I am really struggling with that leap. I mean, it is a beautiful thought. But if I literally have a perfect divine blueprint operating inside me right now, why does my reality feel like a chaotic mess of sitting in traffic and paying rent? Is he just ignoring human suffering?
No, he is not ignoring it at all. He is actually separating it. To answer that exact paradox, Plotinus introduces a dual aspect theory of the soul. He says we aren't just one uniform consciousness, we actually have a lower phase and a higher phase.
Oh, right. And the commentaries we looked at use this brilliant modern analogy for this. Cloud computing.
Yes, I love that analogy.
It makes so much sense. So our lower soul is like your local hard drive. It handles all the earthly, physical survival stuff.
Yeah.
Processing the sensory data, the stress, the traffic jams.
Right, the day-to-day grind.
Exactly. But our higher soul is what they call an undescended soul. It never actually fell into the physical world. It is permanently logged into the divine intellect. We are basically always connected to the cloud.
And that analogy works perfectly because, just like the cloud, the higher soul isn't taking up local storage in your physical brain. It is entirely untouched by the chaos of your local hard drive. Plotinus is essentially saying your connection to the divine was never severed.
Wow.
Yeah, the higher soul is always up there, just engaged in eternal contemplation.
Okay, but so if the cloud is always running in the background, why on earth do we never feel it?
Well, this brings us to the crucial difference between activity and perception. The divine parts of you are always active. They literally never stop.
But we just don't notice it.
Exactly. You lack the perception of that activity because your awareness is completely hijacked by sensory noise. You identify so closely with the anxieties of your lower soul that you just assume that local hard drive is all you are.
That makes sense, but we do get glimpses, right? Like we intuitively know what is better or just. The text actually points out that we possess a permanent, right inside us, this stable standard of goodness. So mechanically speaking, how do we consciously tune into it without just completely detaching from the physical world?
Well, Plotinus gives us a highly practical tool for that. Modern scholars call it the deictic method. The word comes from a Greek root meaning to point or to show.
To point inward, basically.
Right. It is essentially a gentle pointing inward. To explain how this works mechanically, he uses the geometry of a circle. Imagine the one is the center point, and individual souls are the radii, the lines extending outward.
Okay, I am picturing that.
So you don't reach God by climbing some spatial ladder into the sky. You reach the divine by traveling your own radius inward. Mechanically, that means deliberately shifting your attention away from the outer edge of the circle, the external physical world, and tracing your awareness back to the core consciousness that anchors you.
You are just traveling back to your own core. And there is this gorgeous metaphor he uses to explain how to do that without forcing it. The beloved voice.
Oh, yes, that is a great one.
So imagine you are in a crowded, noisy room, and you are straining to hear one specific, welcome voice. You don't try to destroy the room or silence everyone by force.
That'd be impossible anyway.
Right. You just deliberately let the other noises pass by without paying attention to them, keeping your ear primed for that one beloved voice.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, spiritual awakening for Plotinus isn't about destroying your ego or punishing your body.
It's just shifting focus.
Exactly. It is simply shifting your attention. It's letting the sensory noise pass so you can hear the quiet hum of the universe that is already broadcasting inside you.
It completely changes how you view yourself, doesn't it?
It really does. And I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on today. Plotinus and his concept of the interior man deeply influenced modern psychoanalytic theories of the unconscious mind.
Oh, that is fascinating.
Right. Modern psychology often views the unconscious as this dark, murky repository of repressed fears and traumas. But what if Plotinus was right? What if your deepest unconscious isn't a basement of anxieties, but a reservoir of unbroken divine connection, just waiting for you to listen? Usually we talk about the origin of the universe. There's this expectation of a decision, like an architect draws up a blueprint, decides to build, and then suddenly there's a house.
Right, yeah.
Wrong.
A clear before and after in like a deliberate act of creation.
Exactly. But today, well, we have a completely different blueprint in front of us. Welcome to today's deep dive, where we're looking into one of the most foundational texts in ancient philosophy, Plotinus's Ennead V.1.7.
It's just such a fascinating text.
It really is. So our mission for this deep dive is to decode a 3rd century masterclass on how our chaotic, really complex universe sprang from a single perfect source. And it did this without any decisions whatsoever.
Which is wild to think about.
Right. And we're going to discover why changing your mental geometry might actually change your life.
Because Plotinus completely rejects that whole architect model. I mean, the ultimate puzzle here is how does a perfectly simple, unmoving entity, what he calls the one, create a messy, dynamic reality without actually deciding to do so?
Okay, let's unpack this. The source gives this really great analogy of the sun. Like the sun doesn't wake up and try to shine, right? It doesn't exert effort to warm the earth.
No, not at all.
It just naturally overflows with light purely because of its own fiery perfection.
Yes, exactly. And he formalizes that through the doctrine of double activity. Basically, every true reality has an internal activity, which is its unchangeable essence, and then an external activity, which is just an automatic byproduct.
So the one stays perfectly still.
Right. That absolute stillness is its primary activity.
And then its sheer perfection causes a glow to kind of radiate outward as this raw, unformed potential. That secondary activity is the overflow.
Exactly. But, a raw glow is just static. For it to become our complex universe, it has to take shape. And Plotinus argues it does this by literally turning around.
Turning around.
Yeah, it's a concept he calls epistrophe, or the return. That unformed glow is naturally drawn back to its source, so it turns to look at the one. And what's fascinating here is the act of looking is what creates the divine mind.
Well,
it becomes a mind by looking at what is beyond mind.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, but I'm struggling with this a bit. Because if I look at a sunset, I don't physically become the sunset,
Right, I see what you mean.
How does the sheer act of looking back at the one actually build a divine mind? It feels a bit like raw clay instantly turning into a masterpiece purely by staring at the concept of beauty.
That is actually a brilliant way to put it. But it's not magic. It's about defining boundaries. By gazing upward at absolute perfection, that unformed potential gets bounded.
Okay.
The looking creates the image. It basically transitions from a raw, diffuse glow into a perfect intellect.
Oh, wow. So by trying to comprehend the infinite, the mind ends up defining itself.
Yes, exactly.
And the way Plotinus describes this new mind brings up a fascinating geometric contrast in the text. Because this isn't just cosmic trivia, right? This architecture actually dictates how things physically and mentally move in our world.
It really does.
Let's look at physical sensation, or how we usually move through the material world. It's a straight line.
Right, point A to point B.
Exactly. You want a physical object, you move in a straight line. You hit a limit, you get exhausted, and you stop.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that straight line motion is fundamentally deficient. It inherently represents distance, limitation, and eventual depletion.
Which is exhausting.
Very. Now, contrast that with the divine mind. Because it was created by turning back toward its source, its fundamental motion is a loop. It operates as a circle.
So it's continuous.
Yes. Circular motion is continuous. It's infinite. It doesn't need to traverse physical space to reach a destination because it perpetually revolves around a center. I mean, even the physical orbits of planets in the night sky are just material imitations of this divine circular thought.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Like, why should you care about this ancient geometry?
Well, it acts as a diagnosis of human suffering. We suffer because we get obsessed with the straight lines of the physical material world.
Right. Chasing the next external object, getting tired, hitting dead ends.
Exactly. True freedom comes from turning our attention inward, consciously replicating that cosmic circular return. When you stop projecting your desires outward in straight lines, you reconnect with your own center.
Which doesn't require exhaustion.
Nope, not at all.
Which circles right back to the sun resting in its center, just shining without effort.
I love that.
So let me leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. If our bodies are stuck moving in exhausting straight lines, but our consciousness is capable of infinite circular thought, what happens when you stop trying to reach external destinations and instead learn to revolve around your own inner center?